Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm JG, fitness trainer. For the past 5 years that I've been in fitness training, I've been using this specific method, the Body by Science method. And in that time, since I started reading this book and started looking to other resources about the power of the science of strength training, because that's what this method is all about, discovering the power of what strength training does for the body. What I've discovered is strength training is literally life extension. We're talking about maybe adding a full 6 years of your life to the end of it. You know, able to get around completely comfortable. That's what I see in older adults in my field, specifically where I work. A lot of older adults tend to come to our studio, our strength training studio. So from this book, and I just want to talk about page 99 and page 100 of this book. I mean, it starts out and he basically says, more muscle can save your life. And he literally means that for real. We're talking about Dr. Doug McGuff. He wrote this, John Little co-wrote this book with Dr. Doug McGuff. And Dr. Doug McGuff does train people in a studio as well. He has a studio with Nautilus equipment, the same equipment that I use, that we use. And he's an emergency room doctor. And so he sees repeat customers continuing to come back and trying to get them to do strength training. They would stop ending up in the hospital so often. And in fact, this is a story that he told about this. And, you know, the very beginning of this, he talks about basically that the medical literature affirms that the absolute role in increased muscle mass plays to one's benefit during life-threatening situations as well. And he's talking basically about, say, a huge car accident was to happen, and they're trying to save your life. And the way that he words this here, he says, how long it would take you to reach multi-system organ failure and die is directly linked to the level of muscle mass you have on your body, because all of your other organ weights are going to be proportional to that. He goes on to describe how that works a little bit later, and so I'm going to read you that short part as well. But he goes on to talk about this story. And it basically, it's about his coworker that works with him, and he had severe emphysema. He went to the hospital. He had to be put on a ventilator for a good couple of weeks, maybe longer. He didn't want to even do that. Dr. McGuff convinced him to. And so he goes home after this, and he can barely breathe. He's having serious problems. He is barely able to walk out to the mailbox on a good day. And he's basically stuck in his wheelchair just because he can't even breathe. Eventually, he comes into Dr. Doug McGuff's studio, his Nautilus strength training studio, and he starts him off on just 3 important machines they call the big 3. We're probably talking about here the lat pull down, the leg press, and the chest press, very likely, maybe an overhead press, but I would assume that the first 3 would be way more applicable and important because they use way more muscle mass. And so he starts them out gradually. Eventually, they double this man's strength. And what that means in terms of muscle and organs, he says very clearly here, as a result, when he needed his muscles to perform a level of work that previously would have required him to recruit all of his available motor units and would have left him exhausted, he now had to recruit only half that amount. Consequently, his heart and lungs now had to support the work of only half of the motor units that they used before. And that amounted to far less work for his respiratory system. What we're talking about here, and I mean, this isn't just a respiratory illness that this is good for. I mean, we're talking about every organ in your body. You increase your muscle mass, you start training with strength training, and what you're going to do is you're going to empower every organ in your body, and that's from your kidneys to your liver, your heart function. You're basically going to create if you double your strength, which most people do. Some people triple their strength, is what I've seen, specifically people who build very large lower body muscles. In our method, you know, everyone's very different genetically with how much muscle mass that we can build comfortably without overtaxing our system with drugs that we would never want to take. The story goes on, and Doug talks about how this man, where he thought he was going to die in the emergency room and did not even want Dr. McGuff to put him on a respirator, he lived 6 more years of his life. He never had to use his wheelchair again, and he went on 2 cruises with his wife. Lived, 6 more years. That's fantastic. Those kinds of stories I hear all the time, actually. With the studio that I'm at. Some of the other, this isn't just Body by Science that talks about this. There's so many studies, and I talk a lot about myokines and what those are, what they do for the human body. Every time you push your muscles to absolute fatigue, what you're doing is you're releasing these microscopic proteins called myokines, and of course they're responsible for everything from lowering blood pressure to lowering cholesterol. We're talking about creating the self-destruction cycle of cancer cells, which is apoptosis, fighting metabolic diseases, strengthening your organs, quite literally. So what we're talking about literally here is life extension. In its highest regard, we are strengthening our muscles and keeping them strong so the rest of our body continues to last longer. That's literally what it is. So look, unfortunately, anything like walking or, jogging or anything, aerobic activity, anything like that, that's not going to build very much muscle mass. We really want to fully fatigue the muscles because that's what causes all of those insane health benefits to multiply in effectiveness than if we were just to do some very light activity that doesn't stimulate that muscle growth. What we need is that into very old age. I'm going to drop another video down below, just a link to another video that does talk about full muscle fatigue, what that means, what it looks like. There's some isometric videos that I also posted on this channel that might be of interest. If you just want to get started, there's absolutely no reason to not get started doing strength training today. If you did those isometric exercises on that video that's here on my channel twice a week to absolute muscle fatigue, it would change your life if you have never done strength training before. So that's it. That's my sales pitch today for strength training and life extension. Hey, everybody watching this, I hope you live another 6 to 11 years longer and enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll see you on the next video.